Hey everybody, it's Julie. Welcome to Hello Monday. Today I'm going to be giving you a sneak peek of an upcoming holiday set by Brandy Kincaid that features these adorable dinosaurs. And because my granddaughter's birthday is coming up in November, I actually wanted to take this set and give it a little bit of a twist and make a birthday card, a girly dinosaur birthday card for my granddaughter. So I'm going to start out with some Canson watercolor paper. This is 140 pound, and I loaded that into the Mini Misty, and then I'm inking up and stamping with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne. This ink is really great for working with water-based coloring mediums. Now, this is the palette I've chosen. I kind of tested it out there on a scrap of watercolor paper, and these are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. Now, usually when I emboss my images, I'll apply the color right to my images along the edges and hug the edges of the emboss lines, but I didn't emboss any of these. So to get a better end result, I actually prefer to take a palette, and this is the Waffle Flower Water Media Mat, and it's got these really great wells. So I just took the brush markers and brushed color into those wells, and then I'm going to apply some clean water to my images here where I want to lay down my color, and then I'll load up the water brush with color from my little wells there on the water media mat. Now I like to start with lighter hues first and then build up the colors, because I have found that sometimes, depending on the medium that you're working with, the color, if you apply it too darkly, it can lock into the paper before you have a chance to really spread it out with water and diffuse it as you would wish. So I have found that it's better to layer up the color and intensity and create the shading effect as I go, rather than starting out that way and then trying to desaturate it by adding water and daubing it away with a clean paper towel. It's just so much easier to build it up than it is to take it away. So anyway, I'm going to continue on with the little scales here on this. What do they call this dinosaur? I can't even remember. I do not know my dinosaur terminology very well. Is it a stegosaurus? Okay, so somebody's gonna have to tell me what kind of dinosaur this is, or I'm gonna have to look it up on Google. Because I'm like, okay, I think I know this, but I'm just guessing right now. So anyway, I've applied the color there, and then I'm going to dilute it out a little bit with some water, so it's a little bit paler there on the spots, and their scales, those big scaly things on her back. And then these are all girl dinosaurs, in my opinion. So in my world. So now for the little T-Rex, I'm going to paint her pink. So I'm just going to start by adding some clean water once again to the areas that I want to paint, and then I'm going to start applying the color. And you can see how it's a really pretty soft wash of pink. That's actually a color that's called light carmine, I think, or pale carmine. And carmine is actually kind of a red tone, but when you get a pale version of it and then you dilute it down even further with water, you're going to get a really pretty pink. This is kind of a soft pink now. So I'm just going to keep on going, adding color as I want to shade. And then I have to remind myself that the colors will dry lighter. They look more intense when you're laying the color down, but they will dry a little bit softer and paler than what you see. And when it comes to watercolor, it doesn't look great until it's dry. So, I mean, I'm slopping the color around and I'm like, but I know that in the end, when it's all dry, it's going to look fantastic. So I just keep on going. And I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow here where I put down some of that orange. And the orange is just going to bleed out into that yellow and give me a nice kind of an ombre effect there on her little scales. So as I go, I just kind of keep doing the same process over and over. If I go outside the lines, I will grab clean water or clean my brush so that I'm dabbing with clean water, and then I'll use paper towel to kind of lift up where I went outside the lines if I find it bothersome. So anyway, I've gone ahead and laid down base color here on this little gift wrapped present, and then I decided I wanted to give that pink bow some really like hot pink effect. So I grabbed a deeper, darker pink, and I actually applied it directly onto the watercolor paper, and then I'm going to bleed it out. And this works great because I've got my water brush handy. I'm not just letting it sit there on the paper for like a day and then coming back and trying to bleed it out. Now, if I left it there to dry completely, it might lock into the fibers of the watercolor paper and I might not be able to bleed it out. So, but I don't normally do that. I usually just start, blending out with my water brush pretty quickly. And it's great to have this pink right over the orange color. And I find it creates a really fun shaded effect and just kind of adds extra pop to that present there. Now I've gone ahead and die cut everything out. My dies were off just a little bit when I sent them through the machine, but and I'll explain a little bit more there later what I'm doing. But I wanted to trim out her arms so that she can hold that present. And the die isn't really set up to do that because those arms are pretty doggone tiny. So I'm just going to come in there with my scissors. It's really not hard to do. But as I got to that point, I realized, you know what? I'm just going to trim off the arm that's on the other side of her body because it's not even going to show anyway by the time I tuck the present in there. And then I kind of got going because my die, like I said, was off a little bit. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to even this up a little bit rather than stamping and, you know, coloring and die cutting all over again. I just trimmed it up a little bit where it seemed like I got off with my die and it looks fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on with the rest of the scene. I've got a quarter sheet of Nina Solar White here and I've grabbed a circle from the Polka Dot set and stamped that with Limoncello by Catherine Pooler. And then I'm going to grab Party Dress, which is a not deep, I guess it's a mid-tone shade of pink. And I inked up just a portion of that stamp by angling the ink pad off at an angle. And then I used my little teardroppy spongy things to blend it out where there is no ink. So it'll give me a nice blend from that pink color. And I did have to stamp it twice to get as much intensity as I wanted. So I just re-inked it again and blended it out again and just stamped right over the top. That's the great thing about using a MISTI is you can repeat that as often as you want. And then I grabbed a sentiment and my black ink pad and got that stamped in place. So now I'm going to grab this die. This is from the landscape set and I wanted to have kind of like these rolling hills in the background. Cut apart that panel and then I'm going to blend the grass line. Now you could mask it off and do it that way, but you'll see why as I get towards the end why I did it this way. Now, when I'm working with a mid to darker tone of color, sometimes it goes on too intense. So when I'm using these blending brushes, I like to tap off the excess ink and then start swirling off on the scratch paper and come onto my project. And this will give me a softer blend. And then I can intensify it if I want to, or keep it as pale as I want to because I stamped off the excess ink first onto the scratch paper there before I started blending. So now I'm going to go ahead and reassemble these two panels back together on a base card that I already made. And I'm going to line up the top part first here where the gutter crease is on the card because it'll be a lot easier if there's anything that needs to be trimmed off to trim along the bottom edge than it is along the fold line up there at the top. Now I decided to add some foam tape to this bottom panel here, and again you're going to see why. And I put some foam mounting tape on that. I'm going to pop it up and it'll give me room to do something else as I'm going along here. So I'm removing the liner tape. I put foam tape on the back of both the little dinosaurs there, and you can see I got her little present tucked in there. And here's the little Stegosaurus. I think it's a Stegosaurus. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then in hindsight, I decided I wanted to put a bow on her head, and there's a bow in the set. So I went ahead and stamped and die cut this little bitty bow. And then it's kind of hard to put foam tape on the back of something so tiny. So I just take a glue dot and I just roll it up into a little glue booger and put that on the back. You can't see it, they're clear. And then it lets me attach that at an angle there on the top of her head. And then I had another little dinosaur, and I decided to come back and watercolor that one and die cut her out and pop her in the background. And I could slip her underneath the grassy hill there because I had popped it up with foam tape. And there you have a sneak peek of this upcoming holiday dinosaur set. Thanks for watching.